Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was Exiled and Built a New Village, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Cerulean Forest. The group looked towards the entrance to the forest. It was huge. There was a long trail that would lead them out the forest to the King's Valley, however they would be surrounded by trees on all sides. One of the traders spoke. All right, this is what we hired your group for. There will probably be trouble in this forest. Ray turned to look at her group. All right everyone, chances are we'll encounter enemies in here, so stay alert. When she saw everyone nod, she started walking. The same formation as yesterday. Ray was in front, Byakugan ablazing, and then came Inaki and Van on the sides of the wagon. Finally Yami and Okami were in back. So far they were walking without incident. Hopefully they wouldn't be attacked. Several hours later, nothing has happened. Thus far, Yami was getting bored like hell. The most fun he was having was the fact that he kept seeing a rather large black dog out of the corner of his eye. Stray dog. Kinda looks like a wolf though. Probably watching us to see if we'll drop something to eat. With that, Yami dropped a small snack for the poor animal. The second it hit the floor, it was gone. The dog had grabbed it and ran back into the forest. Wow, fast sucker, must have been hungry. He turned his attention back to the road when suddenly he heard Ray's yell. Get ready, here they come. The group surrounded the wagon and the terrified traders within it. Ray, how many of these bastards are we dealing with? Screamed Van. 12 total. 4 from the front, 5 from the side, and 3 from the back, replied the Byakugan user. Everyone looked aware. Ray was in her Juken stance. Van was just standing there, his hand in a ram seal. Inaki was holding several senbon needles. Okami was holding one of his swords, in his right hand, and a kunai, in his left hand. Yami moved into his regular taijutsu stance. This was the most nerve-wracking moment before any fight, the calm before the storm. Then suddenly bandits started popping up all around the group. It had begun. Ray had a look of pure concentration on her face. She knew for a fact that 4 bandits were nothing to bad. Being a chunin, she could easily fight off 4 bandits. Van looked at the bandits who were staring him down. There were 3 of them. The bandits were very bulky, obviously worked out. They was holding swords. They were starting to close in on him slowly, and Van could only smirk. Inaki was staring down his opponents, 2 bandits. Inaki did a backflip and landed on the wagon. He then started doing some hand seals. Raiten, lightning shuriken no jutsu. With that, Inaki pulled out multiple senbon which suddenly started sparking with electricity. He swiftly started throwing the senbon needles at his opponents. Usually the needles wouldn't merely hurt his opponents, especially since he had yet to learn a thing about pressure points. However, the electric-charged senbon started shocking the bandits, causing their muscles to spasm. They dropped to the ground shaking slightly. Unless you know how to concentrate your chakra, you won't be getting up anytime soon. Okami was still in his battle position. He was staring down at both of his opponents. The first one came after Okami, sword drawn. This guy's kinda good, thought Okami. The 2 warriors continued their battle for a while. However, the bandit was starting to get tired. Training or not, he's still not up to the standard of a trained ninja, thought the smirking youth. Yami. But they were beaten. Yes, but that doesn't mean they wouldn't have returned to come after us. Yami, you have to understand, sometimes in this life we have all chosen, we must explained Ray, putting her hands on his shoulders. If we don't, we may come to regret it later. In order for a ninja village to survive, some will end up D. It's as simple as that. Some will end up D, muttered the still partially horrified psychic. Yes, they stood like that for a long time. Yami finally started to look at his companions. Ray was staring at him patiently, Inaki was looking at him sadly, Van was looking at him with an odd grin, and Okami was smirking and winking at him. Yami gasped. It was at this point that he noticed just how close he was to the female chunin, or as Okami dubbed her, the hot chunin. Making his face blush 10 shades of red. He quickly turned his face to look at anything but her, which ended up being a laughing Van and smirking Okami. Ray sighed. Two perverts and one overly shy kid, great, thought Ray. Well, let's start moving. Get back into formation, we're moving out. Yes, ma'am. No one paid any attention to the same stray dog that was watching the whole thing. The dog sunk into the forest and faded into the shadows. In the forest, the dog was running through the forest at high speed. To the untrained eye, it would look like a black blur. It finally stopped its sprint coming up to a cave. It slowly walked in. The cave itself was pitch black. The only thing visible on the animal was his yellow eyes. Finally, a figure came up to the dog. "Hello, Shadow, catch anything nice today?" said a voice. "What was that, boy? What's he saying, Koichi?" asked a feminine voice. Quote, Now, we can't have that now, can we?" said a third voice. "No, we can't. I'll take care of them myself," exclaimed a fourth voice. "Calm down, Zaku, we don't even know who we're dealing with yet," a fifth voice called out. "There are a total of 8 of them. 3 of them are merely traders. 3 snot-nosed punks. Finally 2 wearing Chunin vest," stated Koichi. "And what about the Junin? If there are 3 Genins, there ought to be a Junin crawling around," a sixth voice explained. "None according to Shadow," stated Koichi. "No surprise, that mutt is about as useful as you are," called a seventh voice, which caused a growl to come from both Koichi and Shadow. "Calm down," screamed the third voice. "Junin or not, those brats must be taught a lesson. Now who's willing to get their hands dirty?" "I will," called Zaku, fourth voice. "Me and Shadow will help out." Koichi. "Good. Now one more," third. "Hey Mimaru, 2 of the nins in this group are Hizuga." Koichi. The owner of the second voice grinned. "Okay, I'm in." Mimaru. "Good. After you deal with those punks, get out of here. They'll probably send someone to find the bee. They'll probably be Junin level as well. It's best if we abandon the cerulean forest. We'll meet back in the usual town. Now move." With that, 4 figures suddenly disappeared. "Alright, let's take care of these worms and go, Koichi." With that, 4 more figures disappear. The group was walking down the road. They had just exited the cerulean forest and were about to cross into the King's Valley. They were still walking in the same formation. Ray in front, Inaki and Van on each side of the wagon, Okami and Yami in back. Yami was still a bit shaken up about the K, and he hadn't even K anyone yet. The first K is always the hardest. You may feel bad now, but you're going to feel worse when you actually K someone. It'll be easier the next time though, spoke Okami, nose still in a book. "Yeah, I guess. How come you don't feel so upset about this?" "It wasn't my first. Me and Inaki had already gone on a few missions before you joined us. I K someone on my first mission. It was horrifying, but I had to. Inaki's life was in danger. I had to choose between my enemy and my longtime friend. I chose my friend." "Yay. I guess you really had no choice." Okami sighed. "No, I didn't. Though it took me a long time to convince myself of that. I kept thinking that I could have saved them both, but it wasn't an option. Not at my level at least." Yami and Okami fixed themselves in an uncomfortable silence once again. They heard Ray call. "We're coming up on the King's Valley. We're going to take the path on the right. It'll take us over the valley, instead of through it," called the leader. The whole group nodded. Somewhere else, the group of 8 were currently unaware of the fast-moving ninjas that were approaching them. They would overtake them soon. "The King's Valley. The King's Valley, this is the King's Valley?" asked a very disappointed psychic. "What were you expecting?" asked a smirking swordsman. "Something bigger really." A disappointed Yami looked to his left. The valley was tiny, very, very small. It was only about 3 stories tall. The valley, it looks like there used to be a river at the bottom, but it was all dried up now. He could easily see the other side. "Why didn't we just go through it?" "That's why." Yami followed Okami's pointing finger. It led him to a vast forest to his right. People at the bottom are basically sitting ducks. It's easy to ambush someone traveling through there. "Oh." Yami took another glance at the disappointing sight. "Enemy attack. Get off the wagon," shouted Ray. Everyone tensed up and waited for whatever was going to happen. Kunai started flying from the forest. The traders hid behind the upside-down cart. The ninjas started dodging the kunai. Yami fell to his knees clutching his head. Damn it. The downed psychic failed to notice the kunai that stuck itself a few feet next to him. With an explosion, the boy was sent flying up and over the edge of the canyon. Yami! Yelled four horrified ninjas. Yami! Yami was falling down the canyon, he could clearly see the ground approaching quickly, he quickly did a flip and concentrated chakra to his feet. Damn it all. The other four was still dodging kunai. Ray spoke, Yami landed on the ground safely. This eased the minds of the other three nins. But then another voice spoke. He won't be safe for long though. A woman and a man jumped out of the forest. They were both donned in a long black cloak, black leather boots and matching gloves. The man had long spiky brown hair and yellow eyes, the woman had long blue hair done up in a ponytail and her eyes were white and pupilless. Ray sneered, a Hyuga, they both had slashed leaf he eats. Well, AB from the bastard clan, how are you doing today, replied a smirking Hyuga. Ray and Inaki sneered at that comment. Are these missing nin? Commented the medic. Maybe there's something more though, replied Van. What do you mean? Asked Ray. I've heard rumors of a group of missing nin running around with black cloaks on. They are supposed to be a bunch of wannabes. A copycat group imitating the organization Akatsuki. Van. Akatsuki. Never heard of them. Okami. Sure you have. The first Tsukikage took him out a long time ago, he'd taking out all 9 members single-handedly. Okami's eyes widened, yay, I remember now, wait. These guys are the new Akatsuki. The Hyuga spoke, no with the Kuroitsuki, Black Moon. Okami smirked, ha, sounds like the idiot who came up with that name has lost all forms of creativity. The man growled, bastard don't insult us. Van smirked, why not, you guys are nothing short of a bunch of losers, ain't that right Koichi? Ray blinked, you know this guy. Van smirked, yay, his name is Koichi Inazuka, I fought him 3 years ago in the Chunin exams, though he was still with Konohagakure at the time, I quickly took him and his little dog out in the first round, he wasn't on my level then and he certainly isn't now. Koichi growled, I haven't forgotten you Van Strife, believe you me, I will take you out. Ray's eyes widened, Yami's in trouble. Another man in a black cloak is walking up to him, everyone gasped. Inaki-sama and Okami, both of you go help Yami now, leave us with these two. Okami and Inaki both nodded their heads. Both ninjas turned and took off to help their comrade when suddenly a big black wolf suddenly appeared before both ninjas. Said animal looked ready to pounce on the two boys, he was baring his fangs and growling. Both boys got on the defensive, Okami pulling out both swords and Inaki pulling out some senbon. Yo Van, I thought you said he had a little dog, spoke the swordsman. Little bastard grew up I guess, claimed Van. You think? Okami. Enough. Van deal with the Inazuka, Inaki and Okami deal with the dog, I'll deal with the Hyuga, first one to finish needs to go help Yami. Now move out. Yami. Yami was still rubbing his legs, he had taken an aspirin a few minutes ago and it was just now starting to work, his legs however, were still a little sore, but nothing broken. Better thank my chakra training for that. He looked up, he couldn't see his teammates, all he could see was the top of the cliff and the setting sun. Damn cliff, here I was complaining about its small size. Yami stiffened, he felt a large amount of K-intent radiating somewhere behind him. Standing behind him was a mountain of a man. Even with that long black cloak on, Yami could easily see the man's rippling muscles. His slashed cloud heat was on his head. That's not what scared him though, although it did help. What scared him was the man's large double-edged sword. It looks like he can chop down trees with that thing. Endgame, spoke the man. Yami was still partially paralyzed from the K-intent, what? It's my personal motto. Kinda like a calling card, I always say that phrase, whenever I'm about to someone, spoke the black-haired giant. Yami's bee ran cold. The giant started laughing. So how about you just stand still and let me K you quickly, maybe you'll be able to find some real fun up the canyon. With that, the man started walking to the boy. Yami's eyes widened. Yami started stepping back, this man was too much for him. There's just no way, the K-intent radiating from this man was just too much, damn it, I just can't stand here and let him KME. With that thought, Yami quickly grabbed one of his fuma, flicked it open, and quickly chucked it at the cloak-wearing giant. Unfortunately he forgotten to add his power to the shuriken, add that to Yami's lousy accuracy and the fact that he was still shaking, and you get giant shuriken sailing, a good feat, around the giant. Damn it I have got to work on my accuracy, thought a still shaking psychic. Van vs Koichi. Okay, this guy is brash and stupid, a quick genjutsu should be able to handle him easily. I'm going to have to wait till that Hyuga chick starts fighting though. Her Byakugan will easily see through my genjutsu and she'll cancel it for this big lug. With that thought, Van pulled out a kunai and stared his opponent down. The idiot doesn't even have his dog with him, he's got no chance against me. Koichi took off his gloves and started performing hand seals and called out, Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique. Koichi started taking up a more beastly appearance. His nails grew into long claws and his canines lengthened. I'll rip you to pieces. Koichi started running at Van and with a cry of, Gatsuga, double piercing fang, Koichi jumped and started spinning violently at Van. Van easily dodged the attack and threw a kunai at the Inuzuka only to have it be reflected away from the target. No way I'll be able to beat him this way, gotta wait till I can safely cast a genjutsu on him. Rei vs Hyuga. Mimaru turned to face her opponent. She had just sent the 3 traders into the forest to hide. Mimaru, spoke the Hyuga. Ha, Rei. My name is Mimaru, I want you to take it to the grave with you, spoke the smirking Hyuga. Rei glared, my name is Rei, and you will be the one to go to the grave today. Both warriors stared at each other, Byakugan already activated. Both ninjas were starting to wait for the other to make the first move. Finally both caved and started running at each other. They both got into a rhythmic dance with each other, both trying to tap each other with their juken. They were both at equal speeds, so it would all fall down to endurance and luck. The first one to slow down for even a second would be the one to lose the fight. The Hyuga smirked, looks like your little friend is in trouble. The Hizuga was frowning, she could see it too, Yami just got hit hard, she called out to her companions. Okami and Inaki versus Wolf. Okami and Inaki were still standing in battle position with the wolf. Come on, we'll take this thing out quickly so we can help Yami, spoke the medic. I'll take him out right now. With that Okami rushed at his foe, blades drawn. The black dog quickly jumped at the swordsman and started spinning violently. Okami saw this and quickly crossed his blades in an attempt to block the attack. The wolf collided with the blades but quickly pushed away the swordsman as if he were nothing. Okami landed violently on the ground but quickly jumped back up. The wolf landed on the ground, now between Okami and Inaki. Okami growled and was about to charge again when Inaki spoke. Calm down. If you don't, you'll just get thrown around again. Listen, Okami, keep him busy while I charge up my lightning shuriken no jutsu. Afterwards I'll wait when the time is right to attack him. Fine, nodded the swordsman, who then charged at the black wolf. Yami versus the giant. Yami groaned as he slowly lifted himself off the ground. This sucks, the giant continued to walk closer to the boy. If I don't do something quick, I am so royally screwed. Yami quickly pulled out his remaining fuma and flicked it open. The giant merely smirked at this. You might as well lie down and play D-punk. Even if you could aim, there's no way that would work on me. Yami's heart was still going overtime. No reason to wait. Yami launched himself at the giant, fuma in hand, and started attacking him. He couldn't even land a hit. The giant was easily moving out of the way of Yami's pathetic attempts. Yami's eyes shifted silver and he quickly pulled on the giant's left, causing him to fall over. However, the giant was quickly able to jump up using his arm to push himself off the ground. Yami jumped up as well but was immediately clobbered back down. His fuma dropped harmlessly to the ground. The giant landed. Interesting trick you have there, I better snuff you out now. With that, the giant started doing some hand seals and held up his hand, which started to surge with purplish electrical energy. Raiten, lightning blast no jutsu. The ball of crackling lightning formed in the giant's hand. He quickly threw it at the young psychic, who was only now starting to get up to his feet. Yami's eyes widened, the ball connected, pushing him back several yards, all the while his feet grinding into the dirt. When Yami finally stopped moving, his body was still slightly sparking from all the electricity. He finally just dropped to his knees. I can't move. Van versus Koichi. Out of the corner of his eye he could see that both Byakugan ninjas were currently in a dance of death. He smirked, I got him now. Koichi had gone into a pattern of Gatsuga and attacking Van with his claws. However, it didn't work on Van. He kept either dodging or parrying Koichi's attacks. Well, let's give this bastard something painful, he thought to himself as he just dodged another Gatsuga. Van put his hands together and started concentrating, genjutsu, demonic torturous senbon raen. Van, who could still see the forest, was still concentrating hard on the genjutsu. Not going to be able to hold this for much longer, he better pass out soon, Van muttered to himself. He could see the screaming Inuzuka on the clutching his body. Yami just got hit hard, he could hear his teammate call. Van quickly, still concentrating on the genjutsu, his hands in a ram seal, turned his head to see the young man kneeling before a giant of a man. Kid, get up, screamed the man. Big mistake, that was the distraction the Inuzuka needed. Van was startled when he saw Koichi flying at him growling like a madman. Van sidestepped the man at just the right time to avoid a fatal blow. However, I did give him one hell of a scratch on his right side. Bastard, you won't beat me this time with you cheap parlor tricks, growled an extremely pissed and panting Inuzuka. He actually broke out of my genjutsu. Bastard improved more than I thought. Rei versus Mimaru. Both warriors were locked in a dance of death. Neither warrior seemed to falter not even for half a second. They both heard Van scream at Yami. Rei was losing her temper at the smirking chatterbox though. It looks like your little friend is about to there's no way he'll get up after that last attack, laughed the smirking Hyuga. Rei was desperate. If Yami falls, not only does she fail him as a leader, but in her eyes she fails the Hizuga clan as well. Yami is in that position because he somehow saved Inaki-sama. If I let him fall I'll never forgive myself. Yami, run, she frantically screamed. There is no escape from Zaku, he'll chop the little bastard in half, and that's that, said the still smirking Mimaru. Rei growled at Mimaru and continued to attack. Okami and Inaki versus Shadow. Their plan hadn't worked. The fast-moving wolf was beating both genin. They were getting grounded hard. They both heard the screams of both of Chunin. Inaki was starting to get worried, so he took a look over the cliff. Yami was kneeling, still shaking, before the approaching ninja. Yami, pull yourself together, screamed the Hizuga. Watch out, Okami. Inaki turned just in time to avoid getting hit by the wolf. He needs help, fast, I can't let him die because of me. Okami charged the wolf once again, blades in hand. Need to beat this bastard. The wolf charged Okami and once again sent him flying. Okami was knocked on his back, where he had to fight to not fall off the cliff. Damn it, he turned his head and his bee ran cold. The giant was standing right before Yami. Yami, get your up. Yami versus Zaku. The skies were starting to darken, the two warriors were standing before each other. Kid, get up, screamed her older male voice. He's too much. I'm not ready for him, said the black-haired youth between pants. Yami, run, screamed a female voice. The giant was getting closer, sword in hand. His sick grin promised only one thing, death. Yami, pull yourself together, screamed a familiar voice. Various emotions came over the boy. Fear, he was going to die. Anger, he wasn't strong enough. Regret, he couldn't stop this man from hurting his friends. Loneliness, he was all alone and no one could help him. Animosity, for the giant who would soon take his life. And most of all malice, against this man. Yami, get your ass up, screamed another familiar voice. No, it can't end like this. The young warrior started to rise with nothing but hatred, malice, and the promise of pain in his cold blue eyes. The giant stopped a few feet away from the boy when he saw him rise. He was surprised to see various markings burning across the boy's face and lower arms, and then they stopped burning. All that was left was black flame-like marks around the boy. Intent started radiating off the two warriors. Endgame, both warriors said at precisely the same time. Yami's eyes were glowing silver. Black and purple energy started radiating from him as he gave a sick smirk. Zaku, if only for a moment, felt fear well up inside of him. Yami launched himself at the giant, Fuma still spinning at his sides. He threw a punch at the giant's head. Zaku merely turned his head to avoid the punch. He did however forget about the Fuma and was almost beheaded when one came at his head. So the two ninjas went into a pattern. Zaku had to dodge or block both an enraged Yami and semi-sentient shuriken. He didn't receive a second to launch any of his own attacks. This kid, what the hell is he? Yami sent a kick at the giant, which was quickly blocked using his large sword. But instead of attacking again he quickly launched himself off the blade and went into a backflip. He landed several feet away from the giant, Fuma still at his side. He extended his arms and both shuriken went flying out in the direction of the enemy ninja. Zaku tried to block both projectiles with his sword. Big mistake, the Fuma hit with such force that his sword was knocked out of his hand. He wasn't too worried though, he was watching the two projectiles fly into the air. Another big mistake, he failed to notice Yami rushing him and going into his new favorite combo, the one he used against the bandit. He first started hitting Zaku with a flurry of strong punches. Afterwards he knocked him off his balance with a back flip, kicking him in the chin at the same time. However, this man was far too big to finish him off the way he beat the bandit, so he opted to punch him instead. When Yami landed, he was crouching down. He concentrated chakra to his feet, and to his right arm. He would also use his power to push himself faster. He launched himself and landed right fist into the giant's face. Zaku went backwards and crashed into the rocky wall. He was about to get back up when two sharp objects pinned him at his shoulders. Yami had used his Fuma to pin both his shoulders in place. There would be no escape from the demented psychic. Rei versus Mimaru. Both women had stopped their fighting. They were watching what was going on between Yami and Zaku. Mimaru gasped when Zaku was pinned against the valley wall. Mimaru launched herself at the still unaware Rei and tried to attack her heart. However, Rei saw Mimaru coming and quickly dodged, getting hit on her side. Rei got on the defense to fight, but was disappointed when Mimaru kept running. Koichi. We can't win, we're retreating, called the Hyuga as she jumped down the cliff. Yami. One of Yami's shuriken had flown out of one of his pockets. It was just floating in front of Yami for a moment before it launched itself at the pinned man. It was about to reach him when suddenly a woman appeared in front of the giant and parried the shuriken. Another maggot, do I have to KU as well? Came Yami's cold D voice. Mimaru shuddered at the sound of it before pulling both Fuma off of the man and throwing them to the side. The man dropped into the waiting arms of Mimaru and Koichi, who had just arrived to help. What the hell happened to him? Asked the Inuzuka, seeing the B-man before him. I'll tell you later, let's just get out of here. Mimaru. None of you are going anywhere, stated the cold D voice of the psychic. Floating before him were multiple shuriken. He sent them flying, but a spinning wolf came and knocked them out of the air. The wolf came after Yami as the other two jumped away with the downed ally. Yami was dodging all the attacks of the creature before him. He finally called a Fuma shuriken back to his side. He sent it flying at the wolf but was quickly stopped when the wolf went into another Gatsuga. The wolf then went running off in the same direction of the other three. Yami growled, dark chakra flaring up once again. He was about to follow when he felt two hands fall onto his back. He turned to see Rei standing behind him, stopping him from moving forward anymore. Behind her were a beat-up looking Van, Okami, and Inaki. Just let them go, he heard her say. He finally succumbed to the pain and fainted in Rei's arms. Yami, is he okay? Asked Okami. Let me see him, said Inaki, who started checking the young boy over. Yami sighed. Oh, stop complaining and stop making that face, screamed a female voice. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Too hard, Kasai, screamed the psychic. Then stop making that face, screamed Kasai. Kasai, I've been meaning to ask you something since you came in here. Who the hell let you into my apartment? Asked the boy. That silver-haired friend of yours, he let me in and told me you were fixing your hair in the bathroom, so I came in here to help. Do you have any hair products in here? Asked Kasai, continuing to torture, comb down Yami's hair. No, I don't. Wait, Okami. How the hell did he get in? Don't know, but him, Banketsu, and you are listening to some music on your couch, though he has his head buried in some book. You don't have any hair products in your bathroom at all. How the hell do you spike your hair up like you do? Natural, don't comb it or anything. When my hair dries, it just kinda happens on its own. Oh, well, I'm going to run out to get something to put something in your hair. Why aren't you dressed yet? Asked the redhead, just now noticing that Yami was clad in only a towel. Yami's eye twitched, because you rushed in here and started screwing with my hair the moment I jumped out of the shower. Kasai had a thoughtful look. Did I? Anyway, I'll be right back. With that, the hyper redhead rushed out the door. Yami sighed and went to the door. Hey, can one of you pass me my robes before the insane redhead returns? They should be somewhere hanging in my closet. Sure, he heard Banketsu call out. Yami sighed again and just started staring at the mirror. He still had some faint bruises over his body. All the sea had already healed. He grimaced when he thought back to that day. He'd been passed out for 3 days straight. He'd been sleeping at Steiner's house most of the time. That's what they told him. They had almost failed their mission to accompany the traders to the town within 3 days, but in the end completed it after all. They made it on the end of the 3rd day. The other ninja worked fast, however. Ray, Van, and Inaki helped the traders put all the goods back on the wagon. There were also some minor repairs that needed to be done. Okami made a perverted comment on where Yami's head landed when he passed out in Ray's arms, so she ordered him to go fetch the horses. Yami laughed slightly at that. Pervert needs to stop pissing that woman off. After Yami finally woke up, they waited another day and then started going back to Tsukigaku, at a faster pace than they had when they were going with the traders, but still not going at their max speed. They made it home in about a day and a half. That was about 3 weeks ago. Yami had been ordered to stay within the village for a few weeks after he returned, so the rest of Team 7 stayed as well. He stared at the mirror once again. He placed a hand on his birthmark, a cursed seal. After returning back from the trader's mission, the Godime decided to finally tell Yami the truth about his birthmark. Apparently it gives the user a boost of strength, speed, and chakra. However, the user is also flooded with dark emotions. Weizu said it could warp Yami's already fragile mind. Lastly, he said that the mark he had placed on Yami, the kanji of light, was a special type of seal that would help protect him from it. But in the end it will all depend on your will. Troublesome, Yami sighed. He heard a knock. He turned to the door and opened it. Here you go, bro. He grabbed his dark black ceremonial robes. Yay, thanks, Banketsu. Ironic that the robes of the Clan of Light were black. Yami, however, just shrugged it off. It suited his tastes just fine. You better hurry, Kasai could be here any moment now. Yay'll be done quickly, said a smiling Yami. He was glad but also pissed at the same time. He was glad that his friends made the council see for Genin. Both Banketsu and Kasai were still together on a team with Juyu. However, he was kind of pissed off for the reason that Banketsu was chosen. He was chosen because of his father Kyoketsu. Because of who his father was, the warrior of steel. In short, Kyoketsu was a tank that never goes down. When ninjas went on a mission that was sure to involve fight, Kyoketsu was sure to be there. He was a powerful house of pure muscle that could knock out most Chunin-level opponents with one punch. Yet he had decent speed as well. Yami snarled. Sure, Banketsu's father was cool, and Banketsu was really proud of him, but Yami was still pissed. They just want another warrior of steel, miserable bastards, just want another person to take hits. He never did share his feelings with his friends though. I made a vow to not speak a word about the council, plus even if I did speak to him about it he wouldn't care. He wants to be like his father. Yami didn't particularly find anything wrong with that, but it still pissed him off. He did ask Banketsu to be careful while on missions and not to overexert himself. Yami was also afraid that they were going to expect the same out of Sukotsu, his little sister. That'll never work though. Kyoketsu is far too overprotective of that girl. He'd never let her go through that grueling training. It's true too, he once jumped up and ran to the girl when she was falling off a counter. Yami groaned at the memory that occurred almost 2 years ago. Sukotsu was standing on a kitchen counter. She lost her balance. Kyoketsu saw her all the way from the living room and gasped. He jumped up from his position on the couch, started running to the girl. Threw the living room table out of the way, threw another couch out of the way. Kept running, pushed Yami 10 yards out the front door. Slammed into Banketsu, effectively knocking him down. Ran into the kitchen, threw the kitchen table out of the way, effectively scaring the hell out of his wife who almost got hit by it, and finally got to his daughter, who had regained her balance and didn't need help at all. After all that, he just shrugged and went to sit back down on the couch, muttering a small apology to a still downed Banketsu and Yami who had just walked back into the house. Anyway, so he would never allow her to train in the Warriors of Steel style of fighting. The Ishida's style was actually very easy to learn. It involved a very simple training regiment. First they stand in the center of the circle and multiple devices would start throwing rocks at the ninja. The exercise would only end when the ninja falls. The point was to completely numb the nerves to the point that they wouldn't feel any pain. It also was meant to increase their stamina. Yami had watched Banketsu go through that exercise, the one Kyoketsu had invented. Banketsu had only started when he became a genin. He could only stand the constant barrage for about half a minute before falling over. Yami grinned at the memory of Kyoketsu and Suki, Banketsu's mother. They were always really nice to him. In fact, they were worried about him. Suki always saw Yami as far too thin and always tried to fatten him up. She did the same when the boys started hanging out with Kasai. Kasai was someone he was all right with. The reason she was chosen was because she belongs to the Azuki family, but also because of her father. Like the Hanone family, none of them cared to become an actual clan. Instead of living in a large clan house all together, the famous families each lived in individual houses all throughout Tsukigakure. Their family is famous for its fire-based moves. They developed a way to create flames and feed them with their chakra. She couldn't speak too much about it, but she did speak of some things. All she said was that it had to do with exciting the molecules around the user to create fire. The whole family were known as the Fire Dancers. Her father and her uncle, the uncle being the head of the family, were both greatly respected Junin. They were both known as the Lords of Fire. The council was probably hoping that she'd be as good as her father. Yami smirked when he remembered her father and mother. They easily saw that Banketsu was attracted to their daughter and continuously teased him about it behind Kasai's back. Somehow Kasai is still as clueless as ever. Juyu, Yami didn't particularly know much about Juyu. He did know that he belonged to the Takabushi clan and that he was supposed to be some type of lazy genius. He was also chosen. The other chosen genins were the Hana sisters, Sakura and Ayami, who did end up on the same team in the end. Their teammate was Aki Yagami. And of course Kitsune was chosen. She was paired with Jimin and Kuji Mokuzai. Yami finished getting dressed and looked at himself. He dressed himself in ceremonial black robes. The long sleeves went past his wrist, partially covering his gloveless hands. Then instead of his usual black boots, he had on ceremonial black sandals. He turned around to look at the symbol in back, the symbol of the Hikari ever since they joined Tsukigakure, a solar eclipse. A beautiful dark moon with a fiery white circle extending from the sides. He heard a knock on the door. "You decent?" asked Kasai as she came in. "You know, you coming inside kinda eliminates the point of asking if I'm decent," explained Yami in a matter-of-fact tone of voice. I guess. Alright, now stay still while I finish you hair." With that she pushed him down on the chair that was in his bathroom and started to screw with his hair. She placed a liquid, which Yami couldn't see what it was, in his hair and started to spread it. Afterwards she started to comb it down. "So how have you been with those two on your team anyways?" Yami thought about that for a bit. Kasai and Banketsu were worried when they found out Yami didn't pass the survival exam. They left to find him when they heard about him, but by the time they had a chance to, Yami had already left with Team 7 on their first mission. They went to the cage thinking something horrible had happened to Yami, and that's when they heard about him joining the new Team 7. When Yami finally returned home, they went to lunch together and talked about everything. Banketsu was pissed that Yami was doing C-rank missions while he was stuck doing those pathetic D-rank ones. He mentally flinched, realizing that Kasai was still waiting for an answer. "Oh, yay, fine, they're really great." It was true, the three of them helped each other a lot. During the past 3 weeks, they hadn't gone on missions by order of the Godime, they had trained pretty hard. Yami had finally mastered the tree climbing exercise. He also received some helpful training from Rei. When she was available, she helped Yami worked on his water gathering jutsu. It really helped him out having Rei training him. For his part, Yami promised to listen to Rei whenever she was training him. For Rei's part, she promised to wear Hizuga robes that hid her bodily curves. Yami mastered the water jutsu quickly, being able to fill up buckets of water in under a minute. Yami was proud of himself, though he was warned to not get too why. You should be proud of your accomplishment, but do remember that the water gathering jutsu is a very simple jutsu to master. I myself mastered it in about the same amount of time it took you to master it. Rei said she'd help him learn more jutsu next chance she gets. Yami started to training his marksmanship, though he still sucked. Finally he found some time to slightly improve his taijutsu. The combo he used against the bandit and Zaku soon became one of his favorite moves, though he still hadn't come up with a name for it. Okami was becoming better with his dual wakizashis. He was training his marksmanship as well. Finally, his air diffusion jutsu was becoming better. His grandfather, the head of the clan, was helping him with a different form of the air diffusion jutsu. The normal form involved blowing large winds out of the mouth, to simply blow away smoke or L gas away from the target. The downfall, you would only blow away the smoke in front of you. Thus the more advanced version was created. Instead of blowing wind from the mouth, Okami, after doing the seals, would unsheath a sword, hold it up, and started spinning it horizontally at super high speeds. Combined with large amounts of chakra, this would send winds that would blow away anything in a solid circle. Okami could increase the area of effect for this move by adding chakra. There was a downfall to this move as well though. Gramps said, I gotta watch out, using the jutsu this way would consume a lot more chakra. But since I barely use chakra, it shouldn't be a problem. Okami himself barely did use any chakra, he preferred to attack with his swords and other weapons. Chakra he did have, he would prefer to spend on jumping. Okami wasn't that perfect with the tree climbing exercise yet. He could climb up a tree easily but at times would fall off of it. Inaki quickly mastered his lightning shuriken jutsu. Instead of going on to master another lightning jutsu, he decided to start training in learning healing jutsu. He also concentrated in learning about the body. He wanted to learn mostly about pressure points. He was also working on his senbon throwing every now and then. His chakra control was great as well. He already mastered the tree climbing exercise a long time ago and was at the moment adept with the water walking exercise. Yami groaned. Inaki attempted to teach Yami and Okami this move at one point, however both ninjas kept falling into the water. Inaki thought he'd give both boys a little incentive and took them to one of the bathhouse's hot springs. It helped Yami a bit. He could stay up for about 4 seconds but then would fall through. Okami, he never even tried. Every time they attempted this he would sneak off, leaving a bunchen in his place, and start peeking in the woman's bathhouse hiding in one of the bushes. Okay, finished, said Kasai. Yami stared at himself in the mirror. His hair was combed down, his bangs partially covering his eyes. Looking at himself he could see that his hair reached down to his shoulders. Yami turned and smiled at the girl. Thank you Kasai, but next time, let me get changed before you start messing with my hair. The girl smirked. Whatever, come on, I wanna get to festival now. That was the first time he actually noticed her. She was wearing a silk red kimono, adorned with sakura petals. She had a pink sash tied in a bow around her waist. Her normally braided red hair was loose today. I'm so jealous, you actually get to see Kitsune receive the kyubi. You gotta make sure to tell me every that happens. Yami smiled. Yay, I promise. With that said, they both walked out of the bathroom. Yami saw his 3 friends just sitting around. The trio were indeed listening to some music on a record player that Yami's been meaning to get rid of. Where the hell did I get that thing anyway? Gotta buy a CD player. Both Bankatsu and Juyu were wearing plain white kimonos, tied with a black sash. Okami, however, had a gray kimono, tied with a white sash. He also had his nose in his perverted book again. Pervert, thought the psychic. Alright, let's go everybody, yelled an excited girl throwing her arms in the air. With that everybody started exiting the apartment. In the village, noon. Though only a few people actually were going to be at the actual inauguration, the village still celebrated the event as a huge festival. It was the biggest celebration of the village and many people of Twilight Country came to celebrate it. To be honest, Yami didn't really care to be at the inauguration. He would have rather stayed with his friends the whole time. However, Kitsune had come by his apartment one day, after his mission to Tea Country. She wanted to make sure he'd still be there even if they weren't teammates. For some odd reason Yami couldn't say no, even though he would have rather stayed with his friends. Kitsune was ecstatic when she heard him say he would come. She thanked him and took off. Problem: Okami was at his apartment that day hanging out. He heard the whole thing and started putting perverted thoughts in Yami's head. Yami himself couldn't fathom why Kitsune would want him to be there anyways. He thought that the Uzumaki hated him. About 5 or so years back the two of them did hang out in one of the village's festivals. It was one of the first times she had been allowed outside the Uzumaki clan house. It was after Kairai's suicide and Yami had gone into his shell. They both met up with each other and started to hang out, because they were both alone. Or so Yami thought. Actually Kitsune had about 5 Anbu watching her to make sure nothing happened to the heiress. But anyways, they were hanging out and having a really good time when suddenly it happened. A little girl around the age of both children pulled Kitsune to the side and started whispering something to the young girl. Kitsune returned to the future psychic and apologized, saying that she had to go home now. It didn't fool Yami for a second. It happened all too often. He would make a friend that he really liked and someone would tell them horrible things about him, and then his new friend would suddenly not want to be his friend anymore. He confirmed this when he continued to walk around the village by himself. Turned out she was off playing with another group of kids. He did catch her gaze once. She looked shocked, but the second he caught it, he quickly looked away and walked off. Always happened that way. He hadn't had a true friend till he was 9. That was when him and Bankatsu started hanging out. 2 years later they started hanging out with Kasai. Slowly the two of them managed to pull the Hikari out of his shell. So here he was walking around the village with his friends, before heading off to the Uzumaki clan house. Okay, remember Yami, we'll try to be around Ikaitaku around 6 o'clock, you should be out of there by then, stated Bankatsu. Yay, we'll meet you there, said Okami. Yami smiled. Both Okami and Bankatsu had actually become a bit close in these short 3 weeks. Okami and Yami were hanging out more and Bankatsu would hang out with them as well. The two had similar minds. Perverted, Okami stopped being a pervert to Kasai when he discovered Bankatsu's crush. Okami, however, didn't refrain from putting perverted thoughts in Bankatsu's head. Kasai met Okami a few times but didn't think much of him one way or the other. Juyu, well, was usually sleeping. The only reason Juyu even came over to Yami's apartment was because Kasai dragged him there. He turned to the Takabushi. He had his hand in his blue hair and his brown eyes were slightly closed, indicating that he was probably still tired. Inaki was a tad different. He introduced him to all his friends, but Inaki was usually caught up in his studies and training to hang out all too much. The times when he did take it easy were unfortunately times when Bankatsu's group were on missions. Inaki, thought the psychic. Hey Okami, where's Inaki anyways? The swordsman turned to his friend. He's probably with his family, they should be at the inauguration as well, replied Okami a little sadly. Yami easily caught it, though most others would have missed it. He caught it because he felt the same way. A pang of jealousy. Okami, like Yami, was an orphan. Both his parents died when he was very young and he was currently living with his grandfather, who was the head of the family of the Hanone. Yami was a little jealous of Okami as well. Yami was completely alone in the world. Okami at least had his grandfather and grandmother. His grandfather, Adre, was really nice, though Yami suspected that he was a little crazy as well. His grandmother, Kaoru, was one of those stereotypical sweet old granny types that loved to bake cookies. He also had his uncle, his father's brother, but he was usually caught up with his own family. Anyway, he's going to be at the inauguration ceremony, but then he's going to come with you to meet up with us. Yay, alright. Both Yami and Okami sounded dazed at that point, not really listening to what the other said. So Bankatsu, where are your parents? Hanging out with the apple of daddy's eye, replied Bankatsu. In truth, he didn't mind it. Gave him time to be alone with his friends where he would rather be. And it wasn't like his parents ignored him anyways. How about yours, Kasai? Not sure, ran out before I had a chance to ask them. Everyone sweat dropped at the comment. Quote, comma, dot. Okay, how about yours, Juyu? He didn't actually know Juyu's parents, but he thought he'd ask just to be polite. They should be around the festival somewhere, was his reply. The group walked around a bit longer when suddenly Kasai spoke. Hey, there's Kitsune, screamed a pointing Kasai. Yami turned to see the Uzumaki heiress at one of the stands. It looked like she was about to buy something. Yami looked behind her to see both her teammates Jimin and Kuji standing behind her. Jimin was wearing his normal white robe, however this time he didn't have his katana with him. Kuji was wearing robes of his clan as well. They were very similar to the ones that Jimin had on, the color being the most noticeable difference. Kuji's robes were dark green and the pants he was wearing were the same. His sandals, however, were both black. He was wearing his signature black sunglasses covering his green eyes. His shoulder-length black hair combed down like always. The group walked up to the trio. Hey Kitsune. Hey guys, called Kasai, however the second she uttered the name, Kitsune, both boys quickly turned and started to glare daggers at the group. However, when they saw who they were glaring at, they immediately blinked and apologized. My apologies, Thought you were someone else, said the normally silent Kuji. Yay, agreed Jimin. Yami took a look around and noticed some boys hiding around, probably had to protect Kitsune from her fanboys today, and when he turned back to the group, he could see why. Her hair was styled beautifully and fell down her back all the way to her waist. She was wearing the most elegant dress he had ever seen. She was in a white silk sleeveless gown. Its straps were about 1 inch thick. The dress reached down to her ankles. She was wearing sandals as well, non-ninja ones. But what probably drove most boys crazy was the opening that showed off part of her stomach. There was a diamond-shaped hole that was meant to show off her belly button. It's probably for the ceremony, they have to seal the QB via a seal that has to be placed on her navel. He received an elbow to his side. He turned his head to see a smirking Okami, and with that all the perverted remarks that Okami filled his head with suddenly came flooding back with a vengeance. It caused him to blush and suddenly look away. Stupid pervert, first screws with me about Ray and then with Kitsune. He turned his head back, she also had a slight tinge of pink on her face, people have probably been staring at her all day. Kitsune, congratulations and happy birthday, called an excited Kasai. Happy birthday, said the other 4 boys that arrived with Kasai, just remembering that it was indeed her birthday. She smiled, thank you everyone. She looked around and frowned when she saw Okami. I'm sorry but I don't think I've met you yet. Okami grinned and said, the name's Okami Hanon. I'm Yami's new teammate. Pleased to finally meet you face to face Uzumaki Kitsune. Yami's new teammate, asked a confused Jimin. Kitsune also had a look of utter confusion on her face. Oops, guess I forgot to mention that to her when she came by, thought the psychic. Yay, when I failed to join Team 19 I joined up with another team, Okami's on that team as well, explained Yami, telling the same partial lie he told to both Bankatsu and Kasai. Kitsune smiled at him, congratulations, I'm so glad that things worked out for you. You failed our survival exam and yet you were allowed to join another team. Why? Asked the Gekani with a raised eyebrow. Yami's was so screwed, what the hell am I supposed to tell him? It's simple, we saw something in Yami that your Junin-sensei didn't see, replied Okami trying to cover for Yami. Kitsune seemed satisfied with the answer but Jimin was about to press on. Sensing the tension Kasai spoke. So you guys wanna hang out with us? Asked Kasai. I know you don't have much time left before your ceremony, is there something specific that you want to do Kitsune? Nothing much, I just wanted to walk around the village for a while. Well that's what we were planning on doing, said Kasai. With that the 8 ninjas started walking around the village. The village looked about the same as it always does. A few banners here and there dedicated to the Uzumaki. The only true difference was there were more people out on the streets, a lot of out-of-towners, and most of them were dressed in kimonos or robes. That and the fact there were many more Anbu and sentries around. Security was up high and Yami was sure that he could see some following his group. Gotta protect the star of the festival. The group continued to walk around the village. People on the streets were bowing to the Uzumaki heiress. Both Kitsune and Kasai stopped at some stands and bought some small things, which Bankatsu and Jimin jumped at the chance to carry for their crushes respectively. Yami snickered at a comment, made by Okami, about how whipped those two were going to be if anything ever happened with their crushes. The group continued to walk around the village for a while longer when it became about time for the group to split. Alright boys and girls, it's about time that you start moving to the Uzumaki house, said Okami. Yes, he's right, we better start moving, stated the heiress. They all nodded. Yami knocked fists with both Okami and Bankatsu. He muttered a goodbye to Kasai and Juyu. He replied the same way. Remember Ikaitaku at 6 o'clock, you'll probably be out by then. If not, we'll wait a little bit for ya. Okami turned to Jimin and Kuji, you two are welcome to join us as well. Both boys nodded before replying with a maybe. Jimin and Okami stared and smirked at each other once more. Yami groaned, stupid pride. Those two have been wanting to fight the other ever since they learned the other's last name. The Gekani and Hanon, both being weapon-based clan, family, were always in a bit of a rivalry. Silly little sea fight, muttered Yami under his breath. What was that? Asked the future container who had somehow managed to hear him. I didn't say anything, replied the Hikari. Okay, replied Kitsune a little unsure. Well, we must be going now, replied the Gekani. With that the group split up. Yami, Kitsune, Kuji, and Jimin going to the Uzumaki house, Okami, Bankatsu, Kasai, and Juyu continuing to go around the festival. Uzumaki clan house gates, 4 o'clock. They've reached the gates of the Uzumaki clan house where they met up with the Hizuga clan head and his family. Yami and Inaki smiled at the sight of each other. They went up to each other, shook hands. Hey Inaki, how have you been? Haven't seen you in a few days. Inaki smiled back, been studying hard, I have got to train my mind. It's good to see you again Yami-san, spoke a male voice behind Inaki. It was Inaki's father and the Hizuga clan head, Hisashi Hizuga, who inherited the name of Neji's first son. With him was his wife Hitomi and Shikyo, Inaki's brother the clan heir. They were all dressed in matching robes of the Hizuga clan. They were similar to his own, however instead they were tan robes, with grey pants and grey sandals. They of course had the Hizuga symbol in back, a yin-yang. Shikyo, after only meeting the man once, Yami already idolized the older ninja. He was currently 19 years old, he was set to take over the clan when he becomes 25, and is already a high-ranking Junin. He made Genin at the age of 10, Chunin at 11, and Junin at 14, he became Anbu at 14 as well, and made Anbu captain at 15, he recently quit and started doing ordinary Junin missions though. His Byakugan was extremely perceptive. He fought with Juken like most members of the Hizuga but also became fond of carrying around a large katana, from his days in Anbu. He's of course in the bingo book with the phrase, run like hell if encountered, written under his name. In fact the only known problem with Shikyo seems to be the fact that he has an uncontrollable Pocky addiction, he is so AWSOME. Thought Yami with stars in his eyes. Shikyo moved his light blue bangs out of his face and approached Yami. It's good to see you again to Yami, said the man whilst extending his arm. Yami smiled, took it and shook it. Both boys, Inaki and Shikyo, were polar opposites. Inaki with his bad eyes can very well use his Byakugan. If he wears his glasses, with his Byakugan activated, his vision will get distorted and will give him a headache that could rival one of the ones Yami always gets. Without his glasses his vision gets blurry and he can't see straight. So instead on concentrating on his Byakugan, Inaki opted to become adept with Senbon needles. Also for some reason he decided to become a medic nin. Shikyo on the other hand had great vision and uses his Byakugan often. Since he made Anbu he'd be using a combination Juken and his long katana to fight his opponents with. Both brothers looked differently as well. Inaki wore glasses and had the same short dark blue hair of his father, while Shikyo had the same silverish light blue, long hair of his mother. Yami, you know the heads of the Hizuga family? Asked a curious Kitsune. Yami turned to her with a smile, yay, Inaki is my other teammate. His family I met after our first mission together. It was true, about 2 days after they returned home Yami was invited to the Hizuga house. Both happy parents promptly thanked him for saving their son. It's also when he met Shikyo for the first time off somewhere on the Hizuga ground eating Pocky. Hitomi also accused him of being far too thin as well, and tried to force-feed him cookies and other sweets. Must be a mother thing. Okami was there again as well, he was also loved by the head family for saving their son from an earlier mission. Though they were getting tired of him asking perverted questions about the Byakugan. When will he learn? Thought Yami as he walked inside with everyone else. Uzumaki clan house altar, 5 o'clock. Single quote. They were in a large white room with various chairs surrounding an altar. The room was nicely made, it looked like it was made of marble. There were various paintings around the room, none too important, mostly some landscapes. There weren't any windows, the large room being in the basement. Candles were the only source of light the room had. Everyone was in a chair. All the clan heads, their families and some higher-ups, were sitting around the large room. The council was here as well. Lastly the Tsukikage and Kitsune's aunt, Kasumi, were in at the large altar preparing for the ceremony. Kasumi was in an elegant dress similar to Kitsune's, minus the hole over the navel, hers was also red instead of white. Kasumi had very similar features in common with the younger girl, her long blonde hair and blue eyes. Kasumi was Kitsune's official guardian, and was currently the head of the clan, but will promptly pass all those rights over to her niece after the ceremony. Kasumi was never able to teach her niece anything ninja related, not being a ninja herself. I think she's officially a dancer, or maybe it was a singer. Yami turned his head and could see Inaki sitting next to him, and his family sitting near them as well. He could see Hanade, the Kitsune's Junin sensei, sitting near some Hizuga higher-ups. He also saw Rei, sitting next to Hanade, which surprised him. He had no idea she was a higher-up of the Hizuga clan. At his other side was sitting Megumi. Yami took another look around. There were about 3 dozen Anbu here. They weren't taking any chances. Finally Kitsune, still wearing the same dress, came inside the room. She was walking to the center of the room looking around for something. It seems that she found it. She caught eyes with Yami. They both seemed to stare at each other for a while. Why is she looking at me like that? Thought a confused psychic. She merely smiled at him and turned her head forward to the cage and her aunt. She reached the stairs, the small set of stairs that would lead her up to the altar. There were only 5 steps. When she reached the altar, she bowed at the cage and at her aunt and then laid down on the altar. Kitsune's mindscape. Kitsune found herself in front of a mountain. She was currently on a platform before some stairs. Where am I? Wondered the confused heiress. She started walking up the stairs that were built on the mountain. She couldn't see anything below the spot where she ended up on. Clouds were keeping the anything under the platform from being seen, and they seemed to extend to as far as her eyes could see. She could see other mountains popping up from the clouds, but none were as big as the one she was currently scaling. I'm glad these stairs are here, thought a relieved Kitsune. She looked up at the beautiful night sky adorned with countless shining stars. The moon seemed much bigger and brighter than usual. She continued to walk up the cement stairs. I'm almost at the peak. When she reached the top of the mountain, she gasped. Before her was a humongous house, one only a giant could possibly live in. The house was painted white and had a dark blue roof. It sat on another set of stairs. She didn't even know how she would open the doors that were at least 50 times her size. Suddenly the doors started to open, as if they were reading her mind. Kit, come to me, she heard a demonic voice howl. Could that be the Kyuubi? She asked herself mentally. Indeed, now come to me, Kit, called the same voice. It startled her. What? How did you hear me? The seal connects me to your mind. It will take you a little bit of practice to be able to conceal your mind from me. Now, come to me. I will not ask again, screamed Kyuubi. It startled the girl once again. She decided to enter the large house before she further annoys the large beast. She walked up the stairs and entered through the door. She discovered that the huge door was actually a gate though. When she entered, she found herself in a huge garden. There were multiple flowers and trees around the garden. A small river extended from one wall, all the way to another. But the thing that stood out most was the giant fox that sat only a few feet away. Kitsune stared in amazement. Kyuubi, she said excitedly. The fox was just staring at her as if sizing her up. Finally it grinned. Come closer, child. She started to walk over to the huge fox and finally stood before him. Suddenly the fox threw his paw at the young girl, getting ready to K her in one swipe. He froze, his claw 2 inches from her face. She didn't even flinch. She just gave a foxy smile, accented by the new whisker-like marks on her cheeks. The fox grinned. I like you, Kit. I like you a lot. You remind me so much of him. Who? Asked the young woman. My first container, Naruto, spoke the fox. Kitsune gasped and she suddenly had stars in her eyes. Do I really remind you of Naruto-sama? From the iron will to those beautiful blue eyes of yours. Yes, you will be a good container for me, said the grinning fox. I'm honored that you think so highly of me, great Kyuubi-sama, said the container, bowing respectfully. The Kyuubi smiled at the girl. You're more respectful than Naruto was. I like that. Now sit down with me so I can teach you some things you'll need to grow. What's your name anyway? My name is Kitsune Uzumaki, great Kyuubi-sama. With that the girl sat down next to the thousand-year-old fox and listened intently on its every word. Uzumaki clan house altar. Yami, like many others, was on his feet, worried etched on his face for the girl that was only screaming seconds ago. Weizu smiled at Kasumi. The young girl had finally stopped thrashing about. The ritual was complete. Weizu picked up the small girl in his arms. He then carried her off, followed by a dozen Anbu. Kasumi froze and looked straight at Yami. Why's she staring at me? Kasumi smiled at Yami and then followed the cage. Yami felt a hand touch his shoulder. He looked down at a smiling Megumi. Calm down, she'll be alright in a couple of hours. Yay, was Yami's reply. Yami was surprised, he hadn't even noticed when he stood up. Uzumaki clan house gate. Everyone was walking out of the clan house, the inauguration was over, the Kyuubi had found its new container. Yami was walking side by side with the Hizuga. Yami. Yami turned to see who had called his name. It was Megumi. Megumi-sensei, is there something you wanted? Yeah, I need you for something. If you don't mind, could you come to my office at the academy, let's say around midnight? Yami blinked. Midnight. Why so late? I have my reasons. Now will you come or not? Yami sighed. Yay, sure, I'll be there. Good. With that said, Megumi walked past her old student and left. Wonder what she could want. He sighed again and walked off to join Inaki, who waited for him at the gates. Hey Yami. Yami turned to see Jimin and Kuji behind him. The Hanon invited us along as well, spoke Jimin. Yami nodded. With that, Yami, Inaki, Jimin, and Kuji went off back into the village. Ikaitaku, 607. There was a loud ruckus going on in the ramen stand. There were multitudes of people going in and out of the restaurant. Poor Natsuko couldn't keep up with all the request. Her daughter Tomoyo, aka Ramen Girl, was going burning herself out. At one of the tables sat Okami, Kasai, Bankatsu, and Juyu waiting for their other friends to show up. Finally they did. Yami, Inaki, Jimin, and Kuji walked in and went to sit with the other group. They were unfortunately bombarded with millions of questions by Kasai. Megumi's office 11:30. Megumi was sitting at her desk. She was drinking a glass of sake and staring at an old picture. The old picture was of a middle-aged woman with hugging, from behind, 3 children that couldn't be older than 12. Upon closer inspection one could see that the middle-aged woman was a younger Megumi, wearing a standard Junin uniform. And the children. The first one, the one on the left, was a young girl with short red hair and beautiful purple pupilless eyes. Hanade, Megumi said with a smile. The second, the one on the right, was a young boy with red eyes and spiky red hair. Kazu, she said with a slight disappointed frown. Finally the last one, was of another girl. Lovely blonde hair and gorgeous blue eyes. Karai. With that name Megumi broke down and started sobbing, knocking her bottle of sake on the ground. Shatter said bottle. You would have been so proud of him, Karai, why didn't you stay? She somehow managed to say between sobs. She looked once again at the picture of the original Team 7. Of her Team 7. She concentrated on the figure of Karai, and sobbed some more. Memories started flashing back of words from the Godime that would K her, it would K her if they came true. Flashback Cage's tower, Godime's office, right after the mission to T Country. So he activated the cursed seal. Yes, it seems that way Megumi, spoke the Godime. It seems the seal you had placed on him worked as well, said a smiling Megumi. The Tsukikage looked uncomfortable. No, you're mistaken. What? The seal was meant to lock away Yami's darkness away. Unfortunately the cursed seal is too much a part of Yami, he was born with it after all. So in that aspect the seal of light failed. His darkness is unleashed. But what about Yami? Yami went into the cursed seal level 1 form. It enhances his strength, speed, and chakra, and in return Yami loses a small piece of his humanity. However, the seal of light is meant to stop the cursed seal from Yami's mind. So he should be safe from its effects. That is the second purpose of the seal of light. If it works, then why are you so worried? Weizu closed his eyes, dreading what he was about to tell the woman. I'm worried that one day Yami may activate the second level of the cursed seal. Second level. Yes, I read about it in one of the Shodime's reports concerning the cursed seal. When someone achieves this they gain unfathomable power, however the strain on their humanity is that much more severe. If Yami goes to this level, I'm not sure if the seal of light will be able to save him, it will be completely left to his will. Megumi was on the verge of tears. Isn't there something we could do? No, I mean, not unless you can change the past. Megumi blinked. What? Weizu sighed. There is only one way for the body to unlock a cursed seal. Orochimaru, the one who discovered the cursed seal, discovered a way to achieve it safely through a special box and a potion. It is the only safe way to acquire it. Well, why should Yami have to worried about that? The Godime suddenly turned to Megumi, staring straight into her eyes. Megumi, the only way to achieve the second level is to Megumi gasped. When the individual D, the cursed seal infects his body further, and gives it the ability to tap into the second level. If the user is able to return, he has the ability to tap into it. That is the purpose of the box and potion that Orochimaru used. Yami, however, did things the hard way. With that said, Weizu turned to stare out his window. It's just a theory, but him achieving it so early is probably the reason he obtained his telekinetic power. Weizu placed his hand through his white hair and sighed. Megumi was on the verge of tears. End flashback. Megumi sobbed at the memory of that horrible day 6 years ago. Flashback, 6 years ago. Megumi was walking down the road planning on going over to Yami's small apartment. She had been visiting Yami once a week ever since he moved into his small apartment. She finally reached the apartment and opened the door. Her bee ran cold. Inside of the apartment was a man strangling a 6-year-old child to death. You miserable little bastard, it's your fault KRISD and I'm going to make you pay, you brat, then I'll go after you bastard father, said the man as he continued to strangle the child. The child couldn't do a thing against the man. Stop that now, called a pissed Megumi as she ran over to stop the man. The man turned and saw the desperate woman. No problem, you can't kill a person with Senbon needle, not in the end at least, she said, more to herself than to Yami. Megumi snarled and quickly ran back to the suffering child. Yami. Yami's eyes started to glaze over and his face started to pale. He was having trouble breathing. Finally he stopped moving, he stopped breathing, his heart was slowing down. Yami, hold on, I'll get you some help. Hospital. Megumi was pacing around the waiting room. By the time she reached the hospital, Yami's heart had stopped. The cage, who had horror etched on his face, quickly joined her. They both waited for what seemed like forever. Finally a doctor came out of the operating room. A smile on his face, he spoke, "The kid's alright, you can go see him." He didn't have a chance to finish. Megumi and Weizu ran past him. End flashback. She almost lost the last piece of the girl she once considered a daughter. The man was thrown in jail and tried for attempted M. She looked at the clock and gasped, it was almost midnight. She ran in the bathroom to wash her face clean of tears. When she walked back out, she found Yami standing there waiting for her, a slightly tired expression on his face. So what did you want, sensei? I want to give you something. With that said, she grabbed a large scroll that was on her desk. But not here, follow me. You must become stronger, Yami. You must become strong enough to protect your soul. Yami blinked. Okay. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.